Okay, so let's get started. Today, I'm going to very much talk about pitching, and you're probably hoping that I'm going to help you win more pitches, and wondering why I'm qualified to do that. Well, firstly, I absolutely love pitching. I've always loved it. And I know that it's not everyone's favorite things, but what I love about it is that it's a blank piece of paper. You get to know a new brand, an audience, the cultural context, what that problem might be, and then you get to package it up like a business and win it. And because of that, I've done a lot of pitches, more than the average person. My last count was at least 200. I think it's probably edging towards 300, because it's all I've specialized in the last 15 years. And I've worked across different sectors, from luxury to sport to government and consumer goods. The pitches I've worked on have varied from 48 hours to 10 months. 10 months is obviously a very long time. That was a paid pitch, but it was in the Middle East and there were a lot of iterations, but it was essentially a contract but pitching. Through this, I have an 80% win ratio, which is great, but I'll give you my top tip for that in a moment. And my mission today is to give you all the structure which allows you to win more. I'm very much of the belief that you should pitch smarter, not harder. I hate it when I go into agencies and I see everyone pulling all-nighters, getting really stressed, working all weekend. I believe that if you have the right process and structure in place, then you don't need to be doing that. And I don't actually think that that wins pitches, because everyone just gets really tired. So without further ado, I'll quickly just a snapshot of some of the clients I've worked with, so you have a better understanding. A lot of the work I've done is within the brand experience sector. So I've been very fortunate to work on World Expos and the Olympics. I've worked on lots of automotive launches. I also have had the pleasure of being client side, which really excited me because I was working on a pitch. So I got to put out my own pitch and get the responses in. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting, but it was actually the biggest anticlimax ever. And so I've integrated those learnings from being client side into my pitch process, because actually you're sitting there and you're not really that entertained. You just have people coming in one after the other, and it's surprising how few people actually answer the brief. So let's get started. How do you win 80% of your pitches? Probably all wondering. Unfortunately, fortunately, there isn't a magic solution. As Warren Buffett put it so eloquently, the answer is to say no to more. There is no point in going for a pitch just because it's exciting or sexy. Yes, we all love to do the exciting work, but if you want to win more pitches, it's worth saying no. Always work out that opportunity cost. It's probably going to be double what you think it's going to take to win the pitch, and make sure that you have a process. So this is an example of a pitch assessment. It doesn't need to be this detailed, but this is something I've used in agencies in the past. The main thing is that you have a process and you're repeating that process of how you evaluate a pitch. So let's imagine, for the purpose of this talk, because it would be a whole separate talk about how you evaluate a pitch and how you should decide whether you go for it or not. For the purposes of today, let's say that you've decided you are going to go for the pitch. So how do you win it? And what I found is there are 5 elements that win pitches. So today we're going to dissect what I believe these to be. 30% of it is creativity and innovation. But what I find is often 90% actually goes into the pitch of this category. I would put it around 30%. 20% is understanding the brief. Another 20% is budget and feasibility. 15% is the presentation, and those first impressions really do count. And then 15% is team chemistry, and that's both your internal team working on the pitch and your external client relationship. So let's get started with chemistry. You can do all the work, but you are, at the end of the day, a pitch is selling an emotional connection. People have to really want to work with you. So first up, who is in your team? For creative agency pitches, I recommend anywhere from 3 to 5 people. Ideally, my ideal lineup is 4. So that is the pitch mum or dad. They're the leader. They're going to oversee everything. So an account director. They're going to know the client. They're going to be asking the right questions. Next up, if you can, a strategist is great. They're going to go a little bit deeper and really understand the brief. These 2 first roles can be one person. Then you need a visionary, the creative. And they're going to come up with the wild, crazy ideas, and then they're going to maybe be pulled back to earth by the doer or the production person who's going to say what's achievable and feasible. And then all these roles really need to be working hand in hand. A pitch that's of significant value should be run like a project. Ego should be left at the door. And sometimes some of these roles need to be freelancers, which I'm sure this community is full of, who can come in and give a different point of view and freshen up the pitch. I do think a pitch is a full-time workload. I've often seen that people are made to do pitches alongside their day job and just squeeze it in. But also, most importantly, have fun. Like, pitches to me are fun. And if you can create an incredible pitch experience, the whole team will be more excited and you'll get better results. What does that look like? For example, if you've got a new pitch for an automotive brand, then go and visit that automotive brand's sales room and go on a test drive. If you're working for a luxury brand, make sure you go to their flagship store and have a day out there and analyze the brief with the team. Don't make it all desk research. Get out in the real world and go and see how this brand is showing up. But next up, and importantly, it will be a case of, do they want to work with you? And that is the client agency chemistry. Pitching is a bit like dating. You can have the most incredible profile, but if there's no chemistry, you're not going to get the date. And the client is assessing your relationship from day one, from the day you take the brief to how you behave throughout the pitch process. What they're really assessing is, are you going to be fun to work with? Are you going to make them look good? And are you straightforward? And this is, like I said, this is evaluated throughout the pitch process. Next up, and a little bit less exciting maybe, we do have budget and execution. I'm always interested to know how much people are investing in their pitches. As we're quite a broad community, there isn't a specific percentage, but you need to have a sense of what you're investing. I recommend anywhere from 1 to 5% of the full value of the job. Obviously, that's flexible. That amount for me is in time and material. So the agency time should be the outrate, and the materials if you're going to do anything to wow the client with it. And you should be looking at that as 1 to 5%. I like to hit around 3%. I have heard of people doing paid pitches, which is fantastic. I'm a huge advocate for that, but most of the time, these pitches are done for free. On day one, I think it's really important to get to a budget breakdown. This is an experiential example of one. This is not to be copied. These percentages vary, but if you can break up the budget quite quickly on what your agency fees are going to be, how much you're going to spend on the creative, if you've got any hard costs such as production elements, what are they going to be? If you've got venue costs for logistics, what are they going to be? Staffing, what's your digital content going to be? Contingency, all of that, and just divide it up by very broad percentages. I think it really helps everyone realize that, for example, on this budget, the creative team doesn't have £100,000 to spend on balloons. Actually, there is there's a lot to make up. And as we see more and more 360 campaigns, I often see that the kind of content capture and digital side of things can often be slightly forgotten about, but it's hugely important. So that is a top tip. And then the execution element of this is become a trusted partner. So think consciously. Every time you engage with a client, say what you're going to do and then do it. Really, really simple, but it's really important that you're showing, even in the pitch process, you can execute and you're going to follow up on what you say. Next up, probably the most exciting element of the pitch, and it's no surprise that it's the highest percentage, is creativity and innovation. I love creativity. However, I do think that you need structure. Structure equals freedom and creativity. And if you have structure, then that's when you get great ideas. In short, have a process. Have a process that everyone understands, have it on a page, and before you start a pitch, let the pitch team know what that process is going to look like. Run it like a live project, have daily stand-ups or every other day stand-ups, status updates, be very clear on the roles and responsibilities of your team, and make it an enjoyable process. And to demonstrate what I mean here, I have a bit of an example of what a pitch process could look like over 4 weeks. So with week 1, you get the brief, you review it, and then ask yourself the question straight away: what will win this? Is it going to be something wild and wacky? Are you going to have to do some blue sky thinking here, or is it more of a procurement exercise and they want to understand if you have the capabilities to deliver, or you've got the right case studies that show you can deliver? Then identify your team, time and budget. I often see that the pitch comes in and there can be a couple of weeks spent identifying the team. Obviously that just means you're losing the time. And then I think it's really important to get stuck into the research and strategy, working out who the brand is, what the actual challenge is. Quite often the challenge can be slightly hidden in these briefs, and actually you can dig deeper in the brief. I always advocate for a client Q&A on week 1, between week 1 and 2. This isn't don't ask questions in the brief, ask smart questions. So this is an opportunity for you to show that you're really engaged, you're really excited by the brief, but also to build that rapport with the client. And if the client says, oh no, sorry, we're not doing any Q&As, or we're too busy, then I think it's a big red flag. They need to be able to give you that half an hour, 45 minutes. You need to show that you've got a team working on this, and you need to start building that relationship and understand if actually what they've written in their brief, because when you are a client, you're having to distill your day-to-day job into a few pages. So quite often they're missing the key elements of the brief. And what I mean by smart questions is I mean questions that go beyond the brief. So if they've left out their target audience, hopefully they haven't, then you need to start asking them about their target audience. If they've made it vague, you need to start identifying who their target audience are, or you need to have looked at the competition and ask for benchmarks and see who their main competitors are and get their opinion on that type of thing. Then we go into week 2. I really don't think you should be getting creative teams in until there's been some time for research and strategy, and you've really identified the brief and done those client Q&As, and then you get in production and feasibility. Again, around halfway through the pitch, sometimes this can slide into week 3. Great to have a tissue meeting. I'm not sure if everyone knows what a tissue meeting is, but it comes from the old days of advertising, when designs were done on tissue paper and they would show them to the client midway through before they were fully developed. So a tissue meeting is your opportunity to show the client some work in progress. You can have 2 creative concepts and get their opinion, or 3, or you can show them the strategy and the direction you're going in. There's a really, really amazing opportunity to get the client to feel involved in the pitch process. Even better, let them think that they're coming up with the idea. because everyone's going to be more sold on an idea they felt that they had participation in. Next up, we've got the presentation storytelling, which is again hugely important. It can be very tempting in a pitch, and I'm personally guilty of this, to get straight stuck into the slides. But actually, if you can leave that a little bit later until you've identified what your story and creative hook is, then you're going to tell a much better story. Visuals, and then the pitch magic element, which I will come on to in more detail later. The budget, hopefully production feasibility, and you've done your budget breakdown at the beginning. It depends what discipline you're working in, but obviously you do need to know that you're sticking to a budget instead of having a nasty surprise in week 4. Then rehearse. Always rehearse the pitch. I know that everyone's busy, and it's probably the last thing you feel like doing when you've been working tirelessly on a pitch, but it's really important just to go through it. Make sure, ideally, go through it with someone who's not been working on the pitch, because when you're working on a pitch, it can be a bit like a client writing a brief for the pitch. You can think that you're making sense because you're living and breathing this pitch every day, and you've come up with the ideas, but sometimes actually it's really confusing and there's no red thread. So really important to get someone else involved in that rehearsal and then present it and win it. So next up, we have understanding the brief. It should be simple enough. Like I said, having been client side, I did notice that not everyone always answered the brief. What I think is really helpful is, certainly in my industry, sometimes these briefs can be pages and pages. They send you everything, and that's really helpful. But actually, you have to be rereading the brief, and quite often there is one simple question, and you need to distill the brief into that simple question for the team. And then the pitch mum or dad can look after all the ancillary information and all the procurement elements that you have to answer, but don't burden a pitch team with all of that information. Try and make it into one simple statement. This is an example of a pitch I was working on just the other week, which was essentially, it was a business merger, and they wanted to do a big launch event of day one of the new business. But there were so many different audiences they were inviting, from government to business partners to celebrities. So it was like, how can you do something that's going to excite people about a business merger and make it quite sexy in an experience environment? That was the question, but it was hidden within pages and pages of a brief. When I talk about understanding the brief, the audience is so important. I'm sure, depending on which discipline you're in, you do a lot of audience analysis and persona mapping, which is essentially what this is. But take a moment to think, what are the goals, the overall goals of your audience, those attending the experience? And this is also relevant to the client. What is the client's goal? So you can do it for not only the audience for the brief you're responding to, but also the audience of the client you're responding to. So what are their goals? What are their needs? What are their attitudes? What are the pain points? And what are you trying to solve? And what's the wider cultural context for this? I decided to show you a quick example for everyone who's hopefully on this call, for the Juno community. So your goals are, for attending this call, hopefully to nail pitches at work. Work smarter, not harder. Your needs are a repeatable formula. So that's a clear structure you can use daily, and real world tactics. This is from the talk I'm doing right now. Your attitudes, because you've shown up, that you're eager to learn. You're short on time. You want to upskill, but we all know that we've got to pay rent. And your pain points are pitch fatigue. Sometimes you have too much info, but not enough impact, so you lose your audience. We've all seen the pitches that are hundreds and hundreds of pages long. They don't pack to the punch. The cultural context is pitching as a daily survival, whether that's to clients and you're on a pitch job, or to your colleagues, or for yourself to pitch to get new work. It's a constant. Right, last up, we have the presentation. And in this context, looks do matter. So a really good presentation for me has creativity, storytelling, and a little bit of magic. Again, going back to the repeatable formula I talk about, this is my formula for how a pitch should look. You need to have a strong opener. Strategy is ideally going to play a role, or what your point of view is. And then you have the creative and a piece of pitch magic. Then you're going to have making it happen. Ideally, you don't need to present this, but you need to have the people in the room who can discuss it if there's anything that's complicated. And then a strong close. And everything should be clear and concise content. You will lose your audience by going into too much detail, so keep it really simple. So what do I mean by pitch theatre, or pitch magic, or the magic of pitch theatre, let's say. So what's really important is to give people the experience that you're trying to show them. So if you're working on a print campaign, show them what it's going to look like on a billboard. If you're doing a 3D experience, show them what it will look like in VR. Or even better, if you're doing a PR experience, show them how this is going to be captured on the front pages of all the news. So go that little bit further than just a PowerPoint presentation for your pitch and show them the magic. You're probably all wondering why there's a waiting room on the right with show don't tell. This is a really great example of pitch theatre by Rory Sutherland. When Ogilvy were pitching to a client about their customer experience, and they turned the whole agency reception into a deliberately bad experience for the pitch. Invited their audience. The client walked in to a very uncomfortable waiting room with a useless receptionist. They served lukewarm coffee, and then the pitch team were late, and they kept them waiting. They made the client feel quite uncomfortable and awkward, and then they finally brought the client into the pitch room about 10 minutes late and conveyed their charade. So what they were doing is they were saying, they were pitching for a customer experience, and they said, what you just experienced was bad customer experience. And we're going to show you how we can transform your current customer experience from bad to really, really good. Very clever, very brave, but it worked because they broke down the emotional barriers with the client and showed them that they completely understood what the brief was about. I personally thought about this, and if I had had time for my own pitch theatre today, I would have sent you all a pitch elixir saying drink me and win 80% of your pitches, and it would have had the proportions of what I've talked about today, but unfortunately I ran out of time. So just to summarize, my belief is that to pitch smarter, you need to think about team chemistry. That makes up about 15% of the overall pitch experience. Then you need to make sure you understand the brief and ask those smart questions. Work out who the audience really, really is. That can be your client audience and your actual audience for what you're creating. Creativity and innovation is always going to be the biggest part, but make sure you have a process and everyone understands what that process is before diving into creativity. Budget and execution is 20%. And the presentation and that pitch theatre or pitch magic that you give is the final 15%. So I hope that was helpful. And I'd like to ask you all to pitch me now and see if you've got any questions.
Please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. And also the chat window is also open. So if you prefer to type, this is an option too. Beatrice.
Hello there. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was great. I'm just wondering, you talked about strong starters and strong finishers, I think. Could you make a few examples of how you would do that? Like, yeah, I think it would be good to have a few.
Yeah, of course. So a strong start is you've got actually, well, we've moved to online a lot more like this talk is. But a strong start, for example, is when we're all waiting, if you're doing a virtual presentation, everyone sits there. People sometimes put up the title of the pitch, and they have the date, title of the pitch, who the agency is, and that is such valuable retail space that is not being used. What if you had a walk-in, you had some music, or you had a comfort break, or you did something depending on what the pitch is about, but you did something that showed off your agency skills or your own skills. I think I've heard of this. I haven't done it personally, but I'm having like giving people a 5-minute comfort break before you start pitching, being like, or delivering coffee to their door, or having something that actually sets the tone that makes this slightly different. The ideal way that I have done it is that you have distilled the brief and what you're going to talk about that day, and you've made a kind of a walk-in piece of animation with a bit of music, asking some thought-provoking questions that are relevant to the brief. So that is a strong opener. A strong close is the pitch theatre, showing, don't tell. I know I put it in the middle, so maybe that's a bit confusing, but if you can take your clients somewhere else or somewhere different, that's a really, really big contender for winning pitches. If you can do a prototype of what you're demonstrating, that's also a really, really big win. So the pitch theatre, I know I had it in the middle, a bit confusing, but you can also move that to the end for a strong close.
Thank you.
Sorry, let's go on, please.
No, I'm going to be naughty and add another question if that's okay. Then, lots of people don't necessarily have the space or the time, especially for smaller projects or smaller sort of clients. I'm just wondering if your medium would only be a presentation or something, or PDF, maybe not even, you wouldn't be present at that. How would you sort of like, there's always that starter page saying what it will be and what you'll be talking about.
Sorry, do you mean the pre-qualification when you say a PDF, just a PDF?
Yeah.
So again, so with that, what I would recommend is don't just, if you really, really want to win the piece of work, don't just send a PDF. Maybe send a PDF in a box or something that they can put on their computer with some popcorn. Make it an experience. Don't just do it, or send them something with your PDF that talks about what your special skills are. It's really hard to say without knowing what your discipline is. I don't know if you want to share what your discipline is, Beatrice.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a sort of like freelance graphic designer, so it's very, very small projects and small area at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's still, as a graphic designer, everything that you do should be showcasing your work. So instead of sending a PDF, what if you were to USBs are so outdated now, and I'm trying to think of how you could do something that's a bit more tactile that shows your skills. But if you're going to do a PDF, maybe you could have a bit of a showcase on those first few pages that personalize it to the client that you're sending it to, or have some what ifs or are relevant to stuff that they've done in the past of what the pitch is. It's really hard to give tips without a context of what the pitch is that you're talking about and what it's for.
Yeah, sorry, I realise that now, but I can't.
But
really
what I'm saying is
go.
No, that's fine. What I'm saying is go beyond what they've asked for. Always over deliver. even if it's yeah, like I said, you could send them a little box that's beautifully designed that is like your viewing party for your portfolio, for example, that with some sweets and popcorn. That's going to make them think and remember you a lot more than just emailing them with a PDF.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
We do have two questions on the chat. So Nene is asking, what do you do when a client keeps adding to the brief while you are in the process of answering it?
Yeah, all clients love to do that. I think if it again, it really depends on the context. This is such a wide community, so it's quite hard. If it's going to add to your if it's going to add to your response, then and it's going to help you, then include and answer it. Otherwise, say you can always say, when we work with you, we will workshop to identify what the priorities are. If what they're adding isn't going to fit within the budget, then that's quite a good way of not saying no and making it about budget. It's a good way to say, or just do quick thought starters on a page for the additions that they've given, or cutting room floor, but make it work for you. And a good way to get around that is also talking about what your process is when you win the work. So it could be that you kick off with an in-person workshop to identify the additions to the brief, and you've got a metric for working out what's the biggest priority for that client. So talk around the process as opposed to doing the extra work.
I can see that Bobby and Kay have asked a similar question, and it's you've already touched a little bit upon it while answering Beatrice. Do you have any recommendations for pitching as a solo person rather than as an agency?
Is that to brands or to agencies?
Bobby and Kay, could you clarify?
Oh, well, I'll talk about both. If you're pitching to agencies for your services as a freelancer, I really, really advocate for meeting people in person. The famous quote is, people will forget who you are, what you did, what you said, but never how you made them feel. And I do think it's really important to get that face-to-face time, offer to go to where they are. Obviously, lots of people work from home, offer to buy them a coffee. Everyone's busy, but people do have 15, 20 minutes, or offer to take them for breakfast. But do something that is slightly more enticing. That's for getting work within agencies. Or another good way with agencies is to talk about a piece of work that they've recently won, or something you've seen of them, and say you'd love to talk about your experience. Or if they were at an award ceremony and they didn't win, you could talk about how you'd worked with the agency that did win. Something to pique their interest more than, hi, I'd like to have some work. Make it useful for them. And useful can be, I'd love to take you for breakfast. And for if you're pitching direct to brands as an individual, then really don't try and shy away. Don't pretend you've got lots of people don't pretend you're an agency. Show them the benefits of being an individual solo agency person. Show them how you're really agile. You normally work with one client one-on-one, and make those what you could see as non-benefits. Show them how they are a benefit to that client, because we all know when you work in big agencies, that client isn't the number one priority. But if you're working direct with a client as a solo agency person, then they would be your priority.
Thank you, Nancy. Do we have any other questions? Oh, we do. Do you have any advice on winning the pitch? Oh, sorry, I just got scrolled up. Do you have any advice on winning the pitch opportunity? I'm looking to pitch to sports brands for financial sponsorship. There's a couple warm contacts I have, but I'm unsure how to reach brands beyond this.
So, I mean, again, it really depends on what it is. If it's you say that you're looking to sports brands for financial sponsorship. So in that instance, you need to show them what's in it for them. Why is this demographic who are going to be so sports brands for financial sponsorship? So if it's a sports brand, then they're going to be interested in how they get their product in front of their target audience, or how they're going to get social media impressions. So you need to show them how you're going to achieve that with what you're asking them to sponsor. Again, visualizing what that might look like is always helpful. Showing mock-ups of maybe the sports personalities doing a post about that brand can help them. And make sure you've done your homework and you know that the two things are colliding and you're actually something that they want. And that is in the position of how you do the pitch. And unfortunately, it does take time and skill and research, and it needs to be put to the client in a really exciting visual way. Also, asking what if is quite a good way to get a client in. Asking some really good imagine or what if we did this, to get the client excited.
And Simon is asking, I've started out in October on my own as a 3-day visualization studio. Is there a good formula that works when connecting with creative agencies that need out-of-house skill sets?
I think with them, again, it's always a case of showcasing your work. I often find agencies really want to meet with me quite often because they're interested in the gossip, or they want to see some of the pictures I've worked on. So it can be a good way to like slightly entice and say, I've worked across XYZ. I'd love to show you some of my work. So don't just send them all your work. Say, I can only really show it to you myself. You can only share it on a call or in person because it's under NDA. That often gets people excited. And I like your self plug. I'll check you out later. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Mariana is asking, what do you recommend when potential clients are not responsive after you have shared your proposal?
Again, that won't happen if you've built the rapport with the client by asking questions, having a tissue meeting, and having that ongoing client chemistry. I've seen this happen a lot, where clients can be really quiet and don't bother responding, and it's so rude. But that is a case of you haven't done the homework in advance to make sure that you have a relationship with the client.
Thank you. Laurelie, I am pitching this Thursday for a grant. There will be 22 pitches in order to get one of 10 grants. It will be recorded as there were a lot of respondents. How can I stand out with a recorded pitch? And good luck, Laurelie, by the way.
Yeah, good luck. Rehearse. Is there anything you can do that's a bit different in how you kind of, whether that is one of those tricks, those visual tricks you see on TikTok all the time, where you appear here and then you appear there? Is there something you can do that's going to stand out? Can you have some type of walk-in moment? But make sure you're thinking about what would engage you. So if you've seen anything interesting, we are so exposed to so much content these days. If you've seen something interesting, is there something you can replicate that will be relevant to the grant that you're pitching for? Or is there something that you can do, or can you say your top five reasons, make it really digestible? Top 3 is even better because we often remember things in 3. Can you animate some graphics over the top so it's just more visually dynamic than you just recording yourself speaking?
I think we also have a follow-up from Mariana regarding her question. I've had cases that after an in-person meeting and Zoom meetings, this has happened. I assume this is no response from the client. Maybe chase an answer. Is that a suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, clients do it and it is so rude. I think you have to think that maybe there's other things going on. But I do believe that if you've qualified it well enough in the beginning and you've had that relationship with the client, I know you said that you'd had in-person meetings here, but sometimes that can be down to the qualification before you've even started the pitch, and you're a number from procurement, and they're not really taking your pitch seriously. I am actually working for someone now who only does paid pitches, and I really respect that because I mean, I've never done just a paid pitch before, just to be clear, because I don't think there's many people who are brave enough to do that. But it shows that, yeah, obviously ask why, what their feedback is. But I have heard of clients not giving feedback. The biggest mistake I've come across is a client who did a pitch, they got no feedback, they chased, and then they were asked to pitch again for the same, for a follow-up about 2 or 3 years later, and they still pitched again and still lost it. And I would have said, don't go near that client again. If they can't give you the debrief, never go near them again.
Which I think also relates to the next question by Nene. Is it a good idea to ask the client why they rejected your pitch?
Yes, always. Always ask for a debrief, because it's what you're doing when you ask for that debrief is you're building the relationship. So it might not work out with the agency they chose. It doesn't always work out. So always make sure you go, and the best yet is to go in person. Always go in person with clients if you can, but make sure you have a session where you ask for a debrief, say that it's so you guys can improve your experience and you'd still love to work with them in the future. Don't be embarrassed to show your keenness.
Do we have any other questions? Maybe someone would like to raise their hand, go off mute and ask. Let's wait a minute in case someone is still typing.
I'm excited for one last question.
Come on, don't be shy.
Okay, if you're waiting for one last question, I'd love to know what the most what the piece of pitch theatre or magic that you've done is that you're most proud of, or you feel has really stood out.
So one that well, there's two. One where we actually took them to a smaller demo. We used a partner studio and took them to a smaller demo of what it could look like, the experience. But it was obviously, this was a big interactive museum experience. So we couldn't build what we were pitching, but we showed them how it could be and did the pitch there. So it gave them a bit of an experience, then did the pitch, took over one of the screens within the environment and did the pitch on that screen. So they had a little bit of an understanding of what we meant by truly immersive experience. And another one that was more, I guess, more architectural and design led, we wallpapered the whole of their meeting room, or our meeting room, with the pitch. So blew it up really, really big and then wallpapered it all. And that was cool. I have also discussed, we've discussed many pitch theatres that often don't get done because people lose their nerve of turning the lights off mid-pitch and making them feel like something had happened, to show them what we meant by like a truly exciting and immersive experience and what that looks like. Kind of like a kidnap style experience, but it didn't go further.
We do have two more questions. Is it okay, Nancy? Do we still have time?
Yeah, of course.
Lovely. Nene is asking tips for when a pitch goes badly and how to recover from it.
I always think if a pitch is going really badly, like it's quite straightforward in that the slides don't work, nothing works. The best thing is to have a sense of humor, to laugh and to admit it's not going well. But if it's going badly because the client's not engaged, I would go back to, that's because you haven't built that relationship with the client well enough to understand what their brief is. And that does happen, unfortunately, with digital fatigue and overload. Sorry, I've just seen that there's another one. How to recover from it, especially when the client really wasn't happy. Oh, that's not very nice. I think the best way then, if the client is actually unhappy with the pitch, which I'm not sure that they have a right to be unhappy, especially if you're pitching for free, is to say, I appreciate that maybe this wasn't quite what you were after. Could you give us an extra week? This has been really useful for us to understand a little bit more about what you are after or what you're not after. Could you give us another week and we can come back and rectify this, because we'd love the opportunity to talk to you some more. Graphic designer, prices. Sorry, I don't know if you wanted to read it out, but the questions, I've had this a lot recently, and what I've found really works is to let people to have a range, a price range, to say that if it's under 5 days, it's this much. If it's under 10 days, it's this much. Above 10 days goes, and that's a sliding scale. I find that helps. When the price thing is so hard, because people will always pay for something if it's really good. But I guess with Fiverr and all of those websites, people think they can get things cheaply. But often it becomes a headache down the line when it's too late. I respond with much less enthusiasm than I do for clients who are keen on working together from the start after seeing my portfolio. How do you go about these kind of questions? Like I said, a fluctuating price scale. I know of people who have half their rate for the right projects, so people can really flex their rate. But I think you've got to realize that it is business at the end of the day, and we're all working to get paid. So don't be disheartened if someone is asking about price, because they will have someone else who's paying, and it all filters down from a different pot. And you know, we're all working to get paid, unfortunately. As much as I'd say I do it for the love of it, which I do love my job, but I'm also doing it. There is an element of transaction about work.
Thank you. What a lovely webinar and a lot of questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Nancy. I believe we can see Nancy's details on the screen right now, so you know how to contact her in case you have any further questions. And if you would like to join another event, we're having a Craft Your USP and Get More Clients next week, so slightly different, related to personal branding. If you'd like to rewatch this session, just to make sure that you've got everything covered, it will be published in the Freelancer Hub by tomorrow, I believe.